Hello, everyone. This is Mr. T, also known as Mr. Tamulevich, and it's so nice to be back with you again. I've really missed you a lot, and I've been assigned, happily, to read aloud to the high school. Many of you, I don't know how much they read aloud in the high school, maybe a lot. Um, but I know that in the middle school and the lower school, the elementary school, well, they had boxes, and it was a daily thing. So I'm going to ask for some feedback on this because I'm trying to come up with a format. Uh, I could read straight through. I have a relatively short story, maybe 12 minutes, and then have certain conversation questions at the end, which are not so much not so much comprehension questions because I think the story is very straightforward and you'll know what's going on, but more like what do you get out of it? That sort of thing. Is this a worthwhile story? Okay. And then maybe later on, I'll do a little bit of talking about the author. This particular author had a very rough life. She was very poor when she grew up, and she wasn't exactly an orphan, but her mother, who was a nurse, could not, it was in nursing school, couldn't take care of her. She had her, Cynthia is the woman's name, when she was very young, and so she had to go live up in the hills of West Virginia with her grandparents. And her first book was about that experience, which was called When I Was Young in the Mountains. And if you like the one that I'm going to read, I can certainly do When I Was Young in the Mountains, an autobiographical picture book. Uh, I'm trying to read books that have young people and old people in them. Um, what can I say? I'm going to read this one through and then I'll save the questions for the end. If you would prefer, I can do a few paragraphs and then stop and ask questions, which is kind of what I do when I see you live, but then what the heck. So, the book that I'm going to read is called Every Living Thing, and it is a collection of short stories written by Cynthia Rylant, who is still alive and living in, I believe, the state of Washington. Um, and she used to date Dob Pilkey, who's the Captain Underpants guy. So you may have heard of Dob Pilkey. That just didn't work out. So, and the story that I'm going to read first is it's a story. All these stories have to do with human interactions with animals. I interacted with my two dogs this morning in a very positive way. I um, I think a lot of people who are confined, like many of us are, I'm pretty confined, um, get a lot of comfort and meaning from our interaction with our pets. So, and the one I'm going to read is called Papa's Parrot. Now, when I was little, I had parakeets, which are pretty much just little parrots. Here's the first page of it, and you can actually see this is not an illustrated book really, but there's a nice kind of a line drawing of a parrot. So, to start out, Papa's Parrot. Although his father was fat and nearly owned a candy and a nut shop, Harry Tillian liked his papa. Harry stopped liking candy and nuts when he was around 7. But in spite of this, he and Mr. Tillian remained friends, and were still friends the year that Harry turned 12. Well, why, I'm just terrible. I have to stop here. Why is it merely, which means unimportantly to me? Why is that? Why is a candy and nut shop owner doing it merely? I think a candy and nut shop is a great thing. Okay, so he liked his papa. I think that's nice. So, but you shouldn't be surprised, like she seemed to be surprised. For you, I'm not going to stop again. But think like that. For years after school, Harry had always stopped by to see his father at work. He was a walker. He did not ride a bus. This was a small town. Many of Harry's friends stopped there too. to spend a few cents on penny candy from the giant bins, or to sample Mr. Tillion's latest batch of roasted peanuts. Mr. Tillion looked forward to seeing his son and his son's friends every day. He liked the company. When Harry entered junior high school, which is a lot like middle school, he didn't come by the candy and nut shop as often, and neither did his friends. They were older and they had more spending money. They played video games. They shopped for something called records. None of them were much interested in candy and nuts anymore. A new group of children came to Mr. Tillion's nut shop now, but not Harry, and not his friends. Now, the year Harry turned 12 was also the year Mr. Tillion got a parrot. He went to the pet store one day and bought one for more money than he could really afford. He brought the parrot to the shop and he set its cage near the sign for the maple clusters, which are delicious, and he named the parrot Rocky. You know, there's such a thing as rock candy. Maybe you should have put it next to the rock candy bin. I don't know. Harry thought this was the strangest thing his father had ever done, and he told him so. But Mr. Tillion had ignored him. Rocky was good company for Mr. Tillion. When business was slow, Mr. Tillion would turn on a small color television set that he had sitting in the corner of the shop, and he and Rocky would watch the soap operas, the stories. Like sands through an hourglass, so also are the days of our lives. Rocky liked to scream when the romantic music came on, and Mr. Tillion would yell at him to shut up, but they seemed to enjoy each other, Rocky and Mr. Tillion. The more Mr. Tillion grew to like the parrot, the more he talked to it instead of talking to people, and the more embarrassed Harry became. Harry would stroll past the shop, on his way, no doubt, to the fast food joint, and on his way somewhere else, and he'd take a quick look inside to see what Mr. Tillion was doing. Well, Mr. Tillion was doing something all right. He was always talking to the bird. So Harry kept walking. At home, things were quite different. Harry and his father joked with each other at the dinner table, just like they always had. Mr. Tillion teasing Harry about his smelly socks, and Harry teasing Mr. Tillion about his blubbery stomach. At home, things seemed all right. But one day, things weren't all right. One day, Mr. Tillion became ill. He became very, very ill. He had been at work, unpacking boxes of caramels, when he grabbed his chest and he had fallen over on top of the candy. Thank goodness a customer had found him, and he was taken away to the hospital in an ambulance. Mr. Tillion was in the hospital, and he couldn't leave it. He lay in bed, and tubes were stuck into his arms, and he worried, of course, about his shop. New shipments of candy and nuts would be arriving. Rocky would be hungry. Who was going to take care of things? Harry said, "I will." And he told his father he would go back to the store every day after school, and I'll unpack the boxes. He would sort out the candy and nuts. I'll even feed Rocky. So the next morning, while Mr. Tillion lay in his hospital bed, Harry took the shop key to school with him. And after school, he left his friends, and he walked to the shop alone, the empty shop alone. In all the days of his life, Harry had never once seen the shop closed after school. Harry didn't even know what the closed sign looked like. The key stuck in the lock 3 times. And inside he had to search the walls for the light switch. The shop was exactly as his father had left it. Even the caramels were still spilled on the floor. Harry bent down to pick them up one by one, dropping them back into the appropriate boxes. The bird in the cage listened to him and watched him silently. Harry opened the new boxes his father hadn't gotten to. There were peppermints, there were jawbreakers, toffee creams, there were strawberry kisses. Harry traveled from bin to bin, putting the candies where they belonged. Ah! Hello! Harry jumped, spilling a box of jawbreakers. Ah! Hello, Rocky! Harry stared at the parrot. He had forgotten that the parrot was there. The bird had been so quiet, and Harry, of course, had been about his business and thinking about the candy and getting everything in order. Harry said, hello. Ark! Hello, Rocky! Answered the parrot. Harry walked over to the cage. The parrot's food cup was empty, and its water was dirty, and the bottom of the cage was a complete mess. Harry carried the cage into the back room. Ark! Hello, Rocky! Is that all you can say, you dumb bird? And the bird said nothing else. Harry cleaned the bottom of the cage, and he refilled the food and the water cups. And then he put the cage back in its place, and he resumed his work, sorting the candy and putting it into the bin. Where's Harry? Harry looked up. Where's Harry? Harry stared at the parrot. Where's Harry? And chills ran down Harry's back. What could the bird mean? It was something like from that creepy TV show, The Twilight Zone. Where's Harry? Harry swallowed and said, I'm here. I'm here, you stupid bird. You stupid bird, said the parrot. Well, at least he's got one thing straight, thought Harry. Miss him. Miss him. Where's Harry? You stupid bird! You stupid bird! You stupid bird! I'm here, you stupid bird! I'm here! And Harry yelled at, I'm here! And he picked up some peppermints and he threw them right at the cage. And the bird screamed, and clung to its perch. Harry sobbed. I'm here. And he lay down on the glass counter. Where's Harry? Harry sighed. And he wiped his face with his sleeve. And he watched the parrot. He understood now. Somebody had been saying to the parrot for a long time, where's Harry? You know, I miss him, Rocky. I miss him. Harry finished his unpacking, and he swept the floor of the shop. He checked the furnace so the bird wouldn't get cold, and then he left. He left and went right to the hospital to visit Papa. And that is the story of Papa's parrot. 14 minutes. So we're going to talk a little bit about this story. When you take your first journalism class, they say if you're writing a story, you have 5 questions answered. Who, or to communicate. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Well, who refers to the characters. What characters were in the story? Well, this is a trickier question than you would think, because there are speaking characters, and there are characters that don't speak. There are characters that are just mentioned. Who are some of the characters that were just mentioned? Even in passing, but it's important. I'm giving you a minute to think about that one. And then I'm going to answer the question for you. The one that comes to mind, the ones that come to mind, are Harry's friends, who didn't come with Harry anymore. They could have come on their own, but they were doing that, young teenage hang with your buddy type thing. Uh, you could just almost close your eyes and see them walking down the small town street, headed for the video arcade or the Burger King. You could also mention were the other younger children who were coming to the store still. Also, we can move on to the speaking people, the speaking parts. Obviously, Harry speaks, and his father speaks. His father speaks in two ways. His father speaks in his own voice, but he also speaks through the parrot. Because the parrot was something like what I'm doing now. The parrot was a tape recorder of not complicated sentences. Or maybe, I guess they were sentences, because it did have a verb and a subject and an object. But they're laden. These are words with a lot of meaning. And they spoke from Harry's father's heart right to the bird. Did he expect, the father, Mr. Tillian, did Mr. Tillian expect the bird to talk to Harry? I don't think so. I think he wasn't expecting to see much of Harry in the shop at all. And during their conversations at home, which were referred to as being normal, well, the bird wasn't there. Because the bird, it didn't, I assume that, I'm quite sure the bird lived in the shop. So, and of course, okay, I'll move on. Those are the threes and the bird. How did the bird feel about this? Well, I think I'm a great believer that animals are capable of affection. Did the bird sit and figure out? Well, I'm gonna let that boy know that his father's missing him. I don't think so. In a cartoon, maybe that would be true. Because look at SpongeBob, almost like sponges talk and squids and stuff. But he's getting the job done. Maybe by an act of God. I don't know. The story doesn't say. A lot of good stories are open-ended, and you can figure out different causations, different causes for things. Was it providence? Was it luck that brought the parrot and Harry's father, that particular parrot, Rocky, and Mr. Tillian together? I don't know. Mr. Tillian did go and answer a need of his. He had a need for companionship. I think we all have a need for companionship. And he went to the parrot. He did not, and I think he loved the parrot. But I think that people who have loving and affectionate natures, who like other people, they can, how can I put it? There's plenty of room. There's plenty of love in your heart for more than one. You can love your dog and you can love your wife. Okay. So I spent a lot of time on who. Those are just ideas. And then you say what? And when, let's see. What refers to the both the incidents in the story and the physical place. So I'm probably going to stick in a couple of illustrations of the candy of a typical candy shop, and maybe if I have time, I'll put in illustrations of that I just get off from nowhere of a parrot and of a father and son. All right. So, and the what also are the incidents, um, including what, where, who, what, where, why, where would be the physical place. I kind of like messed that one up. Sorry, everybody. Where? Also, there's another place. Let's not forget the hospital. The story, and let's not forget their house, where they had the blubbery stomach comment and the smelly sock comment. Okay? So that's the where. And then the why. The why is really, really important because it's the engine that makes everything happen. Why did Harry go, up until he was 12, go to the candy shop? Well, I can think of two reasons without too much trouble. One, he liked candy and he liked nuts. And two, he liked his father. What more do you need? Stories don't have to be especially complicated to be important. For the father, you say, why did the father behave the way that the father behaved? Well, the father behaved the way he behaved because he needed to make a living. We all need to make a living. If you don't yet, you will. So he made a living running a store. Right now, a lot of shopkeepers, you can't go to a candy store now. There are candy stores out there. Last time I was in New York City, I went to this spectacular candy store, which had the best hot chocolate that I ever tasted in my entire life. Even better than Starbucks, which I think is great. And so I think the chances are decent that the father enjoyed his work. Harry's friends did things largely, I think, because they were just at that stage in life when they were on their own and they liked video games and they liked fast food. It's not anything more complicated than that. Who, what, when, where, why. Now, Harry's motivation. Uh, what was his father's motivation to be in the hospital? Why was he in the hospital? It was kind of like external, don't you think? He had a heart attack, so he had to be in the hospital. Did he like being in the hospital? Maybe he didn't like being confined in the hospital and being worried and being sick. However, he liked the fact that some doctors and nurses were caring for him. Of course, that's his motivation. And Harry, why did he like going to the, okay, maybe I'm repeating myself. And then the last one is, what was the bird's motivation? No, let's keep going. What's the bird's motivation? The bird's motivation was probably devotion and love for Harry's father. Animals do have feelings. So it wasn't probably just that Harry's father fed him. Okay? It's probably just like the fact that he talked to him. I know that parrots live a long time and are very intelligent and like stimulation. They like to be interacted with. They like to be spoken to. They like to listen to music, as that bird did, the romantic music for the soap operas. Okay. Um, why did Harry start crying? Well, why did Harry go to the shop? He did it to help his father out because he cared for his father and he cared for the shop. Okay, very straightforward. Why did Harry start crying? Harry started crying because the communication device got through to him. Just with the words, "Where's Harry?" and the second two words, "Miss him, I miss him," that was simple enough. He understood that. And so, of course, as soon as he put things in order, including taking care of the parrot, including turning up the furnace, including cleaning the cage, and feeding it and giving it water, the first thing that he did was he went back to the hospital to visit his father. And you might think, what would I say if you were Harry? What would Harry say to his father? That if that would be a great middle school writing prompt. And if you want to write that out, teachers, I don't know, give me some feedback on this. Um, just a sentence or two. What did Harry say to his father when he got to the hospital? And thank you very much. That's 26 minutes. And the title of the book is Every Living Thing. There are stories about cats and stories about turtles, stories about a sheep, lots of different things. Well, have a wonderful day, and I will see you. I can't see you soon enough. Goodbye, Ivy Mount High School.